Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining our webcast today with Joop van der Voort. Today's webcast is really an opportunity for all of you to chat with Joop and really ask him anything about our product or vision, what we just released in 8.14. So really this time is for you guys to ask Joop any questions that you have. And so I'm going to pass it over to him. He's just going to give a quick introduction about our product vision, and then we'll jump right into it. So on to you, Joop.
Thanks, Erika. So welcome, everybody. I want to keep this casual, so just ask away, and I'll try to answer casually. I also didn't really prepare for this because it's about GitLab, which I love more than almost more than anything. I want to talk a little bit about how what we did in the last few months and what we did in this last release, and a little bit about what we're going to do next. When we announced our B round, which I think was in September, we said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to try and ship the whole flow going from ID all the way to production. We're going to ship it by the end of the year. And with this last release, we're getting so close to the demo that maybe you've seen the other day. It's also here on YouTube. Don't go look at it now, but afterwards. We're so close to having all of these features that allow you to go effortlessly, like in a few minutes. Like the demo is 13 minutes, and we set up GitLab and we set up CI, and it auto scales all the way to creating an app and actually deploying that and having it automatically deployed. All those features that we showed there, we are releasing this year. And 8.14 that we just released yesterday, in case you missed it, 22nd, same day every month, adds a lot of these cool features. And I think one of the most important things that I think we've done and that we've shipped now out to the world has been review apps. So we announced review apps before. In 8.12, I believe, we had review apps as an experimental feature, and then in 8.13 we improved it. But with 8.14, I can honestly say that review apps is done. It works as it should work. And what that means is that, well, let me start by explaining what it is. When you do a merge request, so you want to make some change, and let's say that you have a website. If you, in the past, what you would do is you would create a merge request, and then someone would check out the code, and maybe have a CI running automatically to see if those tests pass. Now, if you wanted to actually see the changes and play around with them, you would still have to check out the branch for the merge request locally and run it in your local development environment. And that's really annoying, right? So you first have to check it out. Then you have to make sure that your development environment is ready for that. Maybe you have some changes that you have to stash first. Maybe you have to run migrations. Overall, it's a lot of work that is not, the threshold to actually do those kind of things is quite high. So with review apps, what happens is then rather than you having to do anything, on every single merge request, we automatically create a new environment that is just like the branch name dot whatever domain you want. And in that environment, we run a full live environment. So if you have an app that requires a backend, it's all running there. You can use all the features. And basically, this allows you that if I make some sort of a change to our website, and we actually use this right now for our own website, you can check it out because it's open source. If I make a change to the website or I propose a change in a merge request, you can just click the link and exactly see the change that I made. And on every commit that I push to the merge request, it will be automatically updated. And then you might be thinking, well, okay, but how do you manage this whole architecture of all these spinning up environments? And well, the nice thing is that, and this is why we say now, okay, now we really ship review apps, is that once that branch is deleted, we'll automatically destroy the environment. So you won't be bothered with having to manage those environments and having to do anything with that. And I think that's an incredibly powerful idea, to be able to immediately see and play around with any changes that were proposed. And I think it's the next step in reviewing code. And I think code review doesn't really, do it justice anymore. We just say this has become change review. But there are a few other interesting things in this release. For one thing, what we saw is that many organizations that develop software or that use GitLab, they work either with contractors or they want to log their time, and they have to use all these different apps for them. And none of these apps are like really good, right? They never integrate well with your stack. They are unfriendly to use. It doesn't help, that you have a separate app, right? You're working in one place and then you have to go to another app to report your time. And if you're an engineer and you're working very deep in a problem, you're not going to think halfway through, oh, I should make sure to report my time. So to improve that, we thought, well, why don't we just build that right into GitLab? So what you can do with GitLab 8.14 Enterprise Edition is you can set for each issue that you're working on, you can set an estimate and you can set how you spend your time. So and you don't even need to do this all at once, right? You can just set an estimate at the beginning. And as you spend time, you can just say, and just type a comment with a slash command. You say spent, and then the amount of time. You can just write 1 hour or 1 day, for instance. So as you are working on, you don't really have to think about it anymore because you are right there. When you're working on the issue is open and everything happens in the same place that you would do otherwise. And just as you would report, for instance, in the issue that you're making progress, in the same comment, you can add a slash command to report your time spent. So this is a very interesting feature, I think, and it makes a lot of sense to have it in the same place. And what we did is, because we are still working on the reporting features and because we're still thinking about how people actually want this information getting out of GitLab, we opened it up to all our Enterprise Edition subscribers, and we hope to get feedback on that. Now, there's a few other interesting things. I think, and I wrote this already in a blog post, but I get the impression that over the past few months, maybe the past year or two, the whole world started working in chat. And it is great. It's very synchronous, right? It's very dependent if you're together in the room. But it allows companies like GitLab that are completely remote to still have a very officey feel. You feel really close to people, and it's very nice for quick conversations. So as the whole world started hanging out in chat, we wanted to bridge the gap from chat to GitLab. And in GitLab 8.14, for the first time, we released the slash commands. So rather than saying, oh, we should create an issue for this, someone goes back to GitLab, creates an issue, goes back, pastes the link. Now all you have to do is you write slash, and then, for instance, GitLab, depends on the trigger word. And then if you want to create an issue, you can set the title, you can set the description immediately. So straight from chat, and GitLab will immediately return you the new created issue, so everyone can click through it. And you can quickly do this kind of thing from chat. What's even more powerful, and I think this is especially interesting, is that with this whole pipelines that we've built, you have staging environment, for instance, and production. You could already in GitLab have a manual button say, okay, only deploy to production when I click this. But what you can do now with these chat commands is you can say from chat, deploy something to production. And I think that's really cool. Of course, you have to have the permission for that. It's not like there's a Wild West and everyone can now deploy to production. But the premise is very, very powerful. And those are the major features, I think, of 8.14. We also improved psychoanalytics so that now you see the analytics on one side, as you saw before, but you see on the right side the actual events of each individual stage. So, for instance, you have the issue stage when a new issue is created. So if you now click on that, you see on the right side all the latest issues that were created. I think that's it makes it much more real. You really see what is happening and what is going on. And then there's a few small issues, a few small features that we've added that I think are extremely cool. And I'll walk through this, and then let's go to the question. One of the things you can do now in GitLab is you can prevent merges until review is done. So you can have discussions, and you can resolve those discussions. And what you can do now, if there's still any unresolved discussions, you can block the merge. Very, very useful, and basically ensures that all review points have been looked over. And this has actually been contributed by Rodolfo Arguda. And then there's now a button to delete all merged branches by Toon Klaas. such an obvious, simple feature, and I think I don't know if I said it in the blog post. It's almost a shame that we didn't have it yet, but it was a really, really nice contribution. All right, so that is basically the release 8.14 in 3 words. There's a lot more. Make sure to check out the blog post. I'm going to look at some of the questions that were sent in. I have here a big screen. So there's a question, is there like a mobile handbook of GitLab for the Kindle? Well, I would check out their site. It should be mobile ready, and it should just work there. And I believe you can just do that from your Kindle straight away. And then there's a question. What are my thoughts on the short-term possibilities of NLP plus chat plus conversational development plus local development data sets from David or David? That's a that's a very specific question. I would love to hear what exactly that you're thinking about. I suppose you would want to have more power in terms of what you say in chat is actually transformed into actions inside of GitLab or code inside of GitLab. That sounds very interesting. I think for us, when we're thinking about chat comments and what to do next and how to construct them, our first worry is this something that's actually very usable, right? It has to be very simple to use chat. We don't want people to have to guess. For instance, I have here one of those Amazon echoes. I shouldn't say the name of the woman because it will turn on. And it feels a lot like programming. You have to know the exact sentences or the exact ways to say certain things. And if we're developing chat commands, it has to be either very, very simple or it has to be 100% reliable if we're doing like smart NLP kind of things. So I think we're just focusing on having simple slash commands that are very easy to use. And then having more complex things we can always do later in the future. So short-term possibilities, I'm not sure. Long-term, yeah, these are very exciting things. Then there's a question, how do you decide what to work on each release? I think that's a really nice question. The way we think about GitLab is we have a long-term vision. We have a vision for at least a year, but usually a little bit further out. You can look this up on our website. It's just our website /vision. Or direction, sorry. Our website and then /direction, so about.gitlab.com/direction. And this long-term vision implies certain things, right? What we want to do is we want to make it extremely easy for anyone to go from ID to production. And everything that falls into that makes sense for us to work on. But the actual planning that we do, we only do about 1-2 months in advance. With the finalization of what we're going to ship next release only happens right before we start the actual release. So the reason that we do that is that it allows us to be very agile, to be very reactive. We don't know yet today what we will know tomorrow. So by planning very far in advance, we set us up for disappointment or disappointment at least to others, because everything we do is open. You can just, at the same direction page, you can see what we exactly have planned. So if we say, okay, in 6 months, we're gonna build this, that would be very naive of us to say, because we don't know yet what we will know in 6 months about the market, about our priorities, about what our capacity, what we've been doing before, etc., etc. So we only plan about 1 month in advance, and then we decide what to plan based on several different things. For one, it has to fit within our vision. If something doesn't fit within our vision, there's not a good reason to do it. Then it has to be feasible to build. We have to be at the stage where we can confidently say, okay, we know that this is what we can do next, and we can actually ship this, and preferably we can ship this within a single release. And if not, we know like what the chunks are that we need to break this up into. And then also what we think is best. And that's a bit of a hunch. There's many variables, and it differs per release, per thing that we schedule, what the exact reason is. But it comes together as those things, I think. Let's see. There's a really long question here from Michael. Hey, Job, I have a question in relation to labels and boards, which I think is a great addition. So the feature is an extension of prioritized labels called label groups, very different from group labels. You want to model labels with a set of mutually exclusive states. It's hard to model this right now with the current labels. This is like a feature proposal from Michael. The label groups would define a set of mutually exclusive labels and thus match perfectly with the behavior of issue boards. It's a natural extension generalization of priority labels, as something similar to what I described has previously been discussed. Well, for one, and let me make this clear for once and forever, not assuming that you actually read everything. Everything we do is in the open. So if we discuss something or we have an idea about a feature, we 100% of the time put it on the issue tracker. That said, it's huge and there's thousands of issues, so I don't expect you to read everything. We are thinking a lot right now about how can we add a layer of abstraction to issues and the issue tracker. And that's a very tough thing. There's been many proposals on the issue tracker about how we can add things like, things like relationships to issues or meta issues, which is something that right now we do with normal issues and then we link them to other ones. Features or more formal project management kind of things. And I think this is one of those things that falls under that topic of a layer of abstraction in issues. And this is very much on top of mind, and we are thinking about it, but we have not come to a conclusion yet. And with we, I mean, not just like people inside of GitLab, I think the whole community. I still hear a lot of different opinions. So this definitely sounds interesting, and I would urge you to create an issue for that so that we can actually spend time to seriously consider it rather than me quickly reading this in a call. But yeah, it's very welcome. Like, we are thinking about this. I don't know if this would be the perfect solution, but this is something we're thinking about. About issue boards in general, there's a million things that we can do, right? Some of our teams internally started to use issue boards instead of having a single issue to go back to, and they found that in some ways it worked extremely well, and in other ways they felt that some features were missing and some things didn't match up one-on-one with their workflow. So we're looking very much into improving issue boards as well and making them a little bit more flexible and a little bit easier to use for different workflows. What we're going to do exactly, I don't know yet, and nothing is planned for next month. But in the beginning of next year, we should definitely be making some changes there. All right. A new question from David again. What kind of data do you receive from on-premise GitLab instances? What kind of quantitative insights can you obtain from this group of users? This is a really interesting question. Because our customers are pretty much only on-prem users of GitLab, it's very hard to get data from that, right? It would be completely unethical to just send all the data to us. And not that we're interested in non-anonymized data. We are very interested in knowing how people use GitLab. So what we did is we introduced a usage ping, which is a little ping that pings to a server of ours. And that the only thing that it gives is counts, like how many issues are there, how many issue boards have been created. And that is right now pretty much the only data that we get. And if you're using GitLab Enterprise Edition, you can actually see this. So in the admin screen, so if you're an administrator in your server, you can go into the settings and you can see the actual payload that we send to our server. So you know, and you can also turn it off, of course, but do you know exactly what we sent? And it's just very, it just gives a raw indication of how people are using GitLab. So the insights that we get from that are at this moment very minimal. And of course, that's a big shame. So we prioritize talking a lot to customers, talking a lot to users, making it very easy to give us feedback in all other ways. But we are a little bit restricted in that sense because it is on-prem and because we have to be smart about how do we handle these kind of things. An insight that we can get, for instance, is that if we release a new feature and we made sure that it is in the usage ping, we can see that there's an uptake of usage. Or for instance, if we make a feature easier to use, is there then an uptake of usage? That is something that theoretically we could pick from that. Historically, I don't know if we actually had like clear indicators like that yet, or that we actually spent a lot of time doing that. But we have some people at GitLab, and myself included, that care very much about getting more data and being more scientific in that sense about how we move forward and how we make changes to GitLab. So I hope that this is something we can improve in the future. But as always, we have to be smart about how we actually get data and what kind of data we can actually get. Let's see. Are there any downsides of only planning a few months ahead? I think, as I said, this is a really interesting question as well. It's the only downside that I can really think of. Well, let's say there's two. One, it requires every month to reevaluate what is important to us, and that means that we're never very relaxed in sense of, oh, this is what we're going to do next. No, we have to reevaluate, and as I said, it allows us to be very agile, but it also means that sometimes, you know, we decide to not ship something a certain month, or we're not able to, and then the next month it might not have been that big of a priority. In the end, that's always a plus. But in the moment, it can be confusing. And lastly, because we're open, it would be nice to be able to tell everyone, well, this is what we'll ship over the next year. But the confidence that we would be able to do that would be very low. So in the past, we scheduled more and more in advance, but we found that it was also much less reliable what we were actually telling people. So that's also one of the reasons why we stopped doing this. All right, I think those were most of the questions. So I'm going to leave it at this for tonight, or day, depending on where you live. Everyone, thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you again soon on GitLab.